studying out of the book of 2 Kings, and we're at chapter 13, and verse 20 is where we left off. We're going to study the death of Elisha. It's very interesting. Last week we studied that he had told the king to take arrows and smite the ground, but he only smoked the ground 3 times, remember? And he said, you know, you should have more moxie. You know, hit the ground 10 times. We're going to hit the enemy 10 times, not 3. But, of course, he hit it 3, and that's where it stood at. So that's where we're reading at here. Elisha died, and they buried him in the bands of Moab, of the Moabites. And the Moabites invaded the land at the coming year. And it came to pass, as they were burying a man, that, behold, they spied a band of men, and they cast him, the man, into the sepulchre of Elisha. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood to his feet. But Hazael, king of Syria, oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. The Lord was gracious unto them, and had compassion on them, and had respect unto them, because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and would not destroy them, neither cast he them from his presence as yet. So Hazael, king of Israel, of Syria, died, and Ben-hadad, his son, reigned in his stead. And Joash, the son of Joahaz, took again out of the hand of Ben-hadad, the son of Hazael, cities which he had taken out of the hand of Jehoahaz his father by war. 3 times did Joash beat him, and recovered the cities of Israel. All right, we're going to stop there. Okay, now the prophet Elisha dies. You know, Elijah had done double the amounts of miracles that Elijah had done. And here is a very interesting thing. Okay, there's war going on, and there's people killing people, right? And they take Elisha. Elisha dies, and they put him in a sepulcher, and they're carrying this guy that's been killed. And all of a sudden, they get scared because here comes the marauders are coming into town. Well, they take this guy's body and they chunk him in the grave. And when his feet touch the body of Elijah, the man comes back to life.
Isn't that neat?
This is great. Even in death, Elijah's doing miracles.
Right?
Even in death, you can't put this man down, man. You know? I just think it's amazing that you know, that he does a miracle when he's dead. and you know what? Also, it's the fact that was the very last prophet that we see. Well, not the very last prophet, but it's the most prominent prophet in the Bible that we see dying here. Now, another thing I want to point out is it seems like as soon as you take away God out of people's lives, the devil comes in.
Immediately.
Immediately comes in. Takes away a friend of yours or a loved one. The devil sends people to you, make you want to not trust in God.
That makes you know that there's no gray.
Yeah.
It's black and white and black and white.
But he does. He attacks. You know, soon as the holy man was left, and they didn't have the Holy Spirit at that time like we do. We can call on the Holy Spirit. When we feel those bad feelings coming on us, we can command Satan to get away from us. Right. We have that power. Where these people, oh, here comes the marauders. We're all afraid. We're scared. Yeah. You know. Okay. Now, this King Jehoahaz was plagued by marauders all the days of his life, but God would not let Israel be destroyed. So let's go on to the next chapter, chapter 14. We're going to Amaziah's reign. In the 2nd year of Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, reigned Amaziah, the son of Joash, the king of Judah. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jehodadan of Israel. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like David his father. He did according to all the things as Joash his father did, howbeit the high places were not taken away. As yet the people did sacrifice burnt incense on the high places. And it came to pass, as soon as the kingdom was confirmed in his hand, that he slew his servants which had slain the king his father. But the children of the murderers he slew not, according unto that which was written in the book of the law of Moses, wherein The Lord commanded, saying, the fathers shall not be put to death for the children, nor their children be put to death for their fathers, but every man shall be put to death for his own sin. He slew of Edom in the valley of Salt 10,000, and he took Selah by war and called the name of it Joktheel unto this
God
day.
bless you.
Bless you. Okay, so we have a young king, 25 years old, begins to reign.
Right.
He reigns 54 years. Well, no, he's 54 years old when he reigns until he's 54 years old. His mom's name, Jehoiadan, means Jehovah delights, or God is pleased. And it says here he's a good king, almost. Almost a good king.
He almost made it.
Yeah.
That's horrible to think that you almost made it to heaven. Oh, sorry, that's hard.
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
but you see there it says that David's a measuring stick, okay?
Yes.
David's the measuring stick.
Yes.
Okay. And what is David? David's a guy who was called by God, born, you know, into the, as a king, anointed as king. But did he fail?
More than once.
Yeah. Yeah. He committed murder. He was envy, jealousy, adultery, bloodshed. But one thing he did, he ran to the house of God.
We repented.
He repented. For all the rest of these kings can't seem to do that. And he listened to what God said. God said to build a house in Jerusalem for his name.
Right.
Of course, David didn't do that, but one thing he did do, he gathered all the materials to do it.
And but you know, he wanted to.
Yes, he wanted to.
He wanted to.
But God said he couldn't.
But
because
God
he
said
was
he
a
couldn't.
man of bloodshed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like he didn't do it because he chose to disobey. He actually obeyed God, and that's why he didn't do it.
And it's funny, all these kings, all they have to do is go back to worshiping in Jerusalem and get rid of all these high places, and they would have been okay. But no. No, even to this day, Syria is still fighting with Israel.
It's sweep the floor, like sweeping the floor, but not getting the cobwebs out of the ceiling.
Right. Right to the dirty mop, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He followed God, but he did not remove the high places. The high places are the Ashtoreth gods and the Baal worship. I know I've explained to you what an Ashtoreth is. Ashtoreth is a tree that's been carved into an image of a woman. And this spirit of this Ashtoreth is where the word Ishtar comes from. Easter, right? But they had these Ashtoreth poles they had put up in groves, and even to the point as we read this book later on, they actually bring them into the temple of God, and they have to be removed. By the time Joash is king, he has to remove them out of the temple. These things just kind of like creep in. And the thing about it is that next to the Ashtoreth poles, you would always have a house of sodomites. Okay, the house of sodomites are male prostitutes that run worship to the deity of Ashtoreth, which is a sexual god. So this is a terrible thing to bring into the house of God, and you have to get rid of it. You know, in verse 5 it says, and it came to pass as soon as the kingdom was confirmed in his hand. The word confirmed there is chazak. It's in Hebrew, Chazaq, and it means strengthened or repaired. You got to remember, these marauders came in and was tearing up all the cities. They were stealing their livestock. They were tearing down their buildings, and then this king here, he decided to do something about it. First thing he does, he kills Josacar and Jehozabad, who had killed his father. In chapter 12, we read about these two murderers killed his father. So when he became king, the first thing he does, revenge, right? In fact, but he said in verse 6 that he wouldn't kill the guy's children because of what Moses had said in Deuteronomy 24:16, that you're not supposed to kill the children for the father's sins. And I'm glad that's true, that my sins do not go to my son.
Amen.
Mine don't, because the curse was, Jesus became the curse on the tree for me and for him, and anything that I've done doesn't go to him or my daughter.
Amen.
You know, and so you can't blame yourself as parents when your kids don't do right. I remember my dad tried to blame himself for all the things that we did. It's like, Dad, it's not your fault. You did your best you could. You had children when you were 20. I mean, what do you expect? You know, you don't have a manual, you know, to raise these
They
children.
don't come with a manual.
By the time you have them raised, you realize, now I know how to raise them. I don't have none no more. All right. Okay, so as Amaziah began a war campaign to regain the lands that were lost to Hazael. And it says in verse 7 that he slew of Edom in the Valley of Salt 10,000. The Valley of Salt was a broad plain on the southern end of the Dead Sea. It's still there today. It's also mentioned in 2 Chronicles 25, 11, and 12.
Baby?
And then it says here that they took Selah, and they called it Joktheel unto this day. Selah means a rock. It also could be Petra. And Joktheel means blessedness of God. So they changed the name of the place called to the blessedness of God. This was a rock-hewn city in the capital of Edom, a stronghold that was considered impregnable. Amaziah took the place and renamed it the blessing of God. All right, that brings us to verse 8. Then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, the son of Jehoash, son of Jehu, king of Israel, saying, Come, let us look one another in the face. And Joash, king of Israel, sent to Amaziah, king of Judah, saying, The thistle that was in Lebanon sent to the cedar that was in Lebanon, saying, Give thy daughter to my son to wife. And there passed by a wild beast that was in Lebanon, and trode down the thistle. Thou hast indeed smitten Edom in thine heart, and hath lifted thee up. Glory of this, tarry at home, for why should thou meddle to thy hurt, that thou shouldest fall, even thou and Judah with thee? And Amaziah would not hear. Therefore Jehoash king of Israel went up, and he and Amaziah king of Judah looked one another in the face at Bethshemesh, which belongeth to Judah. And Judah was part of the worst before Israel, and they fled every man to their tents. I know that's hard to read in King James, but the kingdom is divided by war, and these guys' egos are flying. Amaziah is trying to pick a fight with Judah. Did you notice that? He's trying to pick a fight with them. And Jehoash also has an ego. He sends back calling Amaziah a thistle. He says, You're just a thorn in Lebanon, and I'm a tree. Right? Kind of interesting the way they talk to one another. And it says here, Who is the thorn that asked of the daughter? They were trying to make a league between the two nations by the one king taking the daughter, but the ego of the one king said, No, that ain't going to happen. And this only infuriated Amaziah, who meets Jehoash in the battlefield face to face at Bethshemesh, which means house of the sun. And Amaziah was defeated. It says here, they were for the worse. The word worse there is nagaf, which means they are hurt or smitten and captured by Jehoash and the armies of Judah. And the armies of Judah fled to their tents. Okay, so here's Judah getting knocked down again. Ever since Elisha dies, here comes the enemy, you know. And they just can't seem to be to overcome. I still got a little bit of time. I'm going to keep going. Okay, verse 13. And Jehoash, king of Israel, took Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Amaziah of Bethshemesh, and came to Jerusalem, brake down the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim unto the corner gate, 400 cubits. And he took all the gold and silver and all the vessels that were found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house and hostages, and returned to Samaria. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoash, which he did in his might, and how he fought with Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? We'll stop there. So after defeating Amaziah, Jehoash besieged Jerusalem. And it says he destroyed 600 feet around the wall surrounding Jerusalem from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. So here we get the temple ransacked once again. So I can keep putting treasures back in the temple, and the devil keeps taking the treasures back out of the temple. Doesn't that sound like the church?
Yep.
We fill the church up, and all of a sudden there's somebody disgruntled. All of a sudden the church goes back down. You know, one little person leaves, and all of a sudden there's, you know. Or you go to church and you start going, and then all of a sudden all these bad things happen to you. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. You decide, I'm going to go on Thursday nights. All of a sudden something happens, you know. But it is that way. The devil wants to keep ransacking God's temple.
Amen.
That's all he can do to it. He can't destroy us, Kathy. You know? He cannot destroy us, and he can't. He can try to destroy our attitude.
Amen.
You know? And especially toward one another. It's so easy for the devil to try to get you to not like somebody or something about somebody, you know? But first, to pay off Hazael, he takes all they took all the money out of the temple in 2 Kings 12. Now whatsoever's left, Hazael's coming in and taking the rest of it. And hostages, it said. He took hostages. That word hostages, it says it's Ben Tarabah, which means young hostages. So all the young men. They took all the young men. And it says the rest of the acts of Amaziah are written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah, which is a lost book. I mentioned that many times. I keep saying it over and over again. I wish we had those books, though. Every time I read it, I'm going, wish we had some of these books. And I wonder how many religious people would say, we can't put that in our Bible. If we found it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay, and Joash, verse 16, and Joash slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. And Jeroboam, his son, reigned in his stead. And Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, lived after the death of Joash, son of Jehoaz, king of Israel, 15 years, and the rest of the acts of Amaziah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? Now they made a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent after him to Lachish and slew him there. And they brought him on horses, and he was buried at Jerusalem with his fathers in the city of David. And all the people of Judah and Azariah, which was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. And he built Elath and restored it to Judah. After that, the king slept with his fathers. Okay. So, now they're telling us how Amaziah was killed, because they already said he was dead. You know, because now we tell them how he was killed. He had fled from Jerusalem to Lachish, which means invincible, a town considered impregnable. But the assassins go into this impregnable town, find him, and murder him. And although he was crowned king at 16, he did not actually start reigning. This next king did not reign until 11 years later. This Azariah means Jehovah has helped. He's also known as Uzziah. And you remember the scriptures about the day that King Uzziah died? Yeah, so that's the same king here as when Isaiah, is it Isaiah? No, Ezekiel sees a vision. It's Ezekiel, yeah. So Amaziah own subjects later have him killed, and they set up his son. They kill him, and then they set up his son as a puppet king. And Azariah builds Elath, which means trees or grove by the Red Sea, and he gave it back to Judah. After restoring Elath, he dies. All right, so I am down to 10:30. I think we'll stop right there. Next week we'll pick up on chapter 14, starting in verse 23.